I literally have grown men using profanity, hanging up on me, and it's all like brokenness, right? So it's just like being prepared to, okay, this person is going through something. I think in sales in general, we as believers in that space have to be okay with not getting a deal. The surgeon that I had, he's Jewish, Dr. Robert Cameron at UCLA, one of the top lung surgeons in the country. He comes in and he pulls up my CT scan and he said, "This is your CT scan a couple days ago. Do you see all this infection in your lung?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Okay, well, I'm not sure how to describe this, but when I went to open you up, it was completely gone."
Welcome to the Collective Talk podcast, where we share reflections on prayer, family, and ministry. On today's episode, we'll be talking about faith in the fast lane. And I'm so excited because we have a special guest who's my beautiful friend, Melissa Perry, on the show today. So can you help me welcome Melissa Perry to the show? I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having. It's an honor.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so fun. I feel like the first season I wanted you on, and then I'm so excited that I finally get you on the second season.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
And so I know for those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about how you came to Orange County? You're from Arizona, right?
Yes.
And so how you came from Arizona to Orange County.
So I went to college in San Diego at Point Loma Nazarene. It's a small Christian university. I lived in San Diego for about 10 years. And during that time, I started my career with what I'm doing now, so selling cars. And fast forward almost 15 years later, it landed me here in Orange County, where I was opening up the Rolls-Royce dealership. So that's what originally brought me here. And I decided that this was going to be my forever home. I love Orange County. I love the beautiful bubble that we're in. And yeah, that's what brought me to Orange County as work originally.
That's awesome. So I didn't know. So you said you went, was it a Nazarene college?
Yeah.
Is that you? Oh, wow.
I went to Point Loma Nazarene.
I didn't realize that. How did I not know that? That's amazing. That's so cool. So you recently got engaged, which I think is so amazing.
I did.
And Dan is my favorite, and I think he's everybody's favorite. So what is that like? I mean, newly engaged, you're getting ready to get married in January.
Yes.
And what is that like, getting engaged? Well, can you tell a little bit about how you got engaged?
Yeah. So for me, I knew that God always had a plan for me to be with someone, and it wasn't really focusing on the timeline of when that would happen, but just in that moment, I would know this is my person. And so I met Dan actually through Oceans.
Yeah.
And so I met him through Mish, his brother. And not to get too much into the past, but I actually knew Mish and Esther from a previous church that I went to in LA.
Okay.
And Dan and I ended up actually going to the same church for over a year, and we had never met. Fast forward almost 8 years later, I come to Oceans, and just being involved in the community, that's how I ended up meeting Dan.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so cool how God works like that. So you guys knew each other from that other church, but then you came to Oceans, and then you guys were, and you met him through Mish. So she goes to our church, and so does Dan. And so they're the cutest couple ever. You have to follow her on her Instagram. I just love following her. So what are you looking forward to in marriage? What are some things that you're looking forward to?
That's a really great question. I think Dan and I are very driven people in the marketplace, and we both incorporate our faith, not just in our personal lives and with our community outside of work, but also in the marketplace. Yeah. And so for us, I know that we have a passion with, bringing the kingdom into spaces and, just in communities of people that don't know the Lord.
Right.
And so I think collectively, we want to come together as a couple and really love on people that don't know who Jesus is, that is walking through difficulties, that is consistently experiencing, I would just say, the hardships of the world, and bringing them to know the Lord and doing that together actively. And so I'm so excited to do that with him. And honestly, just to be around him. He's my best friend, and to be around him all the time and to have us be able to even start a family, that's a huge a huge want for the both of us is to
Yeah.
start a family. So
That's so cool.
I'm really excited about
Have you
that.
guys talked about like how many kids you want and all of that?
Honestly, I would love to have 2 or 3 of my own.
Yeah.
And then I know in the future, we most likely want to foster and adopt.
That's
But
amazing.
for us, we definitely want to have some of our own. So
Yeah.
we are going to try as soon as we get married
That's
and
amazing.
get this family going.
Well, I'm so I'm so excited for you guys. I mean, I'm pumped too for your wedding and then just all that
Yes.
God's doing. It's a new season definitely for you guys. So you are the person that everybody calls if they need an exotic car. And so how did you get into that line of business and what is that like working with the people that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say this is that I totally felt it was God's favor.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this with a friend yesterday, was that I believe that God has a plan for us. And in order for him to fully build on what he has in store for us, we also have to be planners and we also have to work and we have to toil. So for me, in college, out of college, I was always working. And I actually was working for a magazine publication. It's called Modern Luxury Media.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
I was doing that in San Diego throughout college, a little bit out of college. And I got the attention of a Ferrari dealership owner because I was able to sell Ferrari on like an ad campaign or event campaign.
Okay.
So that's kind of what brought me into that space. And I thought I was going to be selling advertisement to this company, but when they brought me in, they actually wanted to interview me for a sales job.
Wow.
So that's how I was presented with the opportunity to sell cars.
Yeah.
And I immediately said, I don't want to be a car salesman.
Yeah.
I was actually really into fashion and wanting to do that and pursue that. But then about, like 3 or 4 months later, I still had the offer on the table. And I said, okay, my dad always taught me to give something a year. And if, whether or not you like it or you don't, you learn so much of who you are and navigate difficulties. So for me, I was like, I'll give this a year. And now it's 20 years later and I'm still
crazy.
selling cars.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool. So can you tell me what that looks like day to day? Like what, like if you need an exotic car, you need to talk to my friend because I'm like, I see some of the cars that on your Instagram and then how do people follow you on Instagram to see?
Oh yeah. So it's just my name, Melissa Perry.
Okay. Melissa Perry. Yeah.
My company is called the Perry Group.
Yeah.
But I mainly focused on exotic, but now I do everything.
Okay.
So like I can help someone with a BMW or a Range Rover
okay.
just because of my connections. So I just handle all cars.
So you could do all cars.
I can do
now.
all cars.
Okay, but the luxury car or those
That's my
exotic
specialty.
cars, that's your specialty.
Yes.
Okay, and those are so cool. I love looking at your Instagram and seeing all these cars. I'm not good with like cars, so I don't know a lot.
Oh, in Jesus' name you are. We'll get you good at it. We'll get you good.
So Mark's better. He knows what the name of the car is. I just don't know all that. But when I look, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing car.
Yeah.
So what is that like working with the people? I know your foundation is you love Jesus. You have a strong faith. What is that like working in that whole world?
Yeah. I would say is, as far as like my day is concerned, I'm always preparing and equipping myself with the armor of God because I deal with some of the most powerful people in the country, in the world, some of, the top 1% of individuals that have the excess money and can get whatever they want and are constantly wanting more. And I think a lot of people don't know the process of how I work. And there's so many different steps in even just selling one car to someone. So there are a lot of hurdles that I have, not only with the clientele, but the other side of it is I'm working with dealerships all over the country. And a lot of non-believers are in this space. A lot of people that are, just going to a job every day. They don't feel like they have a purpose. They don't know Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's really sad to see a lot of people that I work with on both sides are trying to fill a void with the wrong things. So just being prepared to take on, someone having a bad day, getting hung up on. I literally have grown men using profanity, hanging up on me, and it's all like brokenness, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like being prepared to, okay, this person is going through something and, with testimony and like what I've had to walk through, I think God really equipped me in the last 10 years to be able to take on difficult conversations and just have composure, have grace, and to love on people, even if they don't know how to love back properly, if that makes sense.
Yes. And you're so good at that. Like you're
Thank
like
you.
the most caring person. I mean, I remember when I first started to get to know you, I just feel like you have such a compassionate heart
Thank
for
you.
people and even for the elderly too.
I do.
Like you do.
I love
It's
the
like,
elderly.
my gosh. And just how your heart is just so massive for people. And that's what I love about you. And just to see you thrive in the calling that God has for you. And that's what I love the most about you. But you can, it just comes out of you when you talk to people and you truly care for people. And so that's what I love the most about you. So
Thank you.
yes.
I love you.
So walk me through a day in the life of Melissa Perry. What is that like?
So something important to me is my morning routine.
Yeah.
And aside from selling, I'm also doing coaching.
Okay.
And something that I've learned I've had a business coach, for over 10 years of my career and just learning. I'm constantly wanting to learn, open to learning. I don't know everything, but the one thing that every person that I've ever worked with coaching wise is the morning routine. So for me, like working out, I have to work out. I have to connect with the Lord. So that's reading my Bible, that's journaling. I'm actively have worship on throughout the day because what's great about my job is I can work from my office, I can work from home. And really it's time blocking is essential for me. So I have a set time block schedule of things I'm focusing on in the morning, which is like following up with clients, following up with deals. And then like for hours, at a time, I'm prospecting, I'm calling new people. I'm going out to get business. And I think that's something that's helped me be successful in my career is I'm never waiting for business to come to me. And it's kind of how I look at it with like favor from the Lord or just even blessings or whatever that may be. I'm always actively, working towards that for God to be able to, I guess, finalize that for me or bless me with that.
That's so cool. So working in this space, like what would you say, I know obviously we talked about your faith a little bit and that's your foundation. How is that working with the clients that you work with? Like you said, you got hung up on the phone at one point.
Many times.
Many times.
Yes.
There's, how do you live out your faith in, even with your clientele and the people that you're working with? What does that look like when, your faith is so prominent in your life? How do you live that out?
Yeah, I think in sales in general, we as believers in that space have to be okay with not getting a deal, with losing a deal when you're not sacrificing your beliefs or your ethics in order to make money.
That's good.
And so for me, in a perfect example, I was doing a deal earlier this week on a Ferrari. I had a client send me a car that he wanted. I actually happened to know the car. I was a part of wholesaling it. Long story short, a dealer now had the car that he wanted, which I knew. And the deal was done. It was ready to go. And I remember him asking me questions about the history of the car. And it reminded me that the car had previous damage on it. And this dealer wasn't divulging that to him. I would have got paid on the deal, but I knew in that moment, no, I need to give him all the information, even if it's risking the deal, which it did. But for me, I want to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I'm honest. I am, I have ethics and morals, because that's the impression that someone is going to leave with, whether or not they do a deal with me, is like, what seed am I planting? Even just from how I carry myself, conversations, or even deals falling through. Like, I'm never going to put money ahead of like God and my faith.
That's so powerful. And I think that so many people, even like Mark and I have met so many Christians, like that are in the business space, and their ethics and their integrity is not good, which is shocking. Like
a lot of that happens.
Yes. And so for you, I know that's your heart to be, and that truly is who you are, is full of integrity. And so I admire that in you. And so that's incredible. And working in that space, there's so many people that are just trying to get ahead and they don't care what it costs,
I think people, yeah, even as believers, I mean,
Yeah.
I see it, and we're all human, we're all flawed. I think that is so, like, especially with going to Oceans, is we're constantly connected. It's Holy Spirit driven. There's so many different avenues for us to be connected to God, whether it's through a small group, Tuesday, Thursday morning prayer. And I think that is what's going to separate us as believers, to be able to take on those situations that we get put in. Money is something that has a hold on a lot of people.
Yes.
And we have to actively have God in every step of that, because we can make a mistake and, choose that over our integrity. But I've learned over the years, it's not, money is not worth any of that. Like money doesn't matter. It comes and goes, and it doesn't leave with us when we leave here.
Right. That's so true. I mean, we're all leaving this life with none of the things that we worked for, or none of that stuff is going with us to heaven. And so that's such a great perspective, Melissa. So you have been at our church for, has it been 2 years?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So 2 years. And how do you think your relationship with Jesus has grown since coming to Oceans?
Oh my goodness. I would always say it's like forever changing. Like I'm trying to grow closer and closer with him all the time, every day. But I'm a completely different person. And I think I really was able to understand what surrender was and what it meant to fear the Lord, and like fear being away from him, and fear not having him a part of every aspect of my life. And it just changed my perspective. And it really has grown to a place where I'm excited. I'm excited for what God has for me, and not expectant. Like in the sense of like, I'm not expecting something from him. I'm not expecting him to give me favor in return for, my faith in him and walking with him. It's just that I have a peace that I just can't explain. Like nothing penetrates anymore. And like the stress and anxiety, it comes sometimes, but it doesn't affect me the way it used to when I didn't really know what it meant to like have him a part of every aspect of my life. So, and for me, I will say, like, growing up in my 20s and into my 30s in a very like money driven industry, it's always about the deal. It's always about the money. And it's always about, even the clients I deal with, it's always about the financial status. And so a lot of people are focused on their finances. So I'll be honest, like it always kind of had me on the edge of my seat of like, am I doing enough? Am I making enough? And now it's just like, I have everything, even if I have nothing.
Oh,
yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's so incredible, Melissa. Well, it's so cool to see. And I remember the first moment that you came to Oceans, and just to see you now, I mean, just what God's done in your life. And it's just amazing to watch, like your obedience to God and what God's done through you and the people that you're impacting, and how just you're a pillar in our church. And so I'm so grateful. And I remember the first time going out with you, and to see you now is just incredible. But I know this might be personal, and you can answer this question or not, but I know that you have a miracle story, like with your health.
Yeah.
And do you mind sharing a little bit about your like story about what God healed you from, and the miraculous way that he did?
So I was supposed to be going to New York by myself, unbeknownst to me, which now I felt like it was the Holy Spirit telling me, invite your mom. So 24 hours later, I invited my mom. We're on the plane, and about halfway into the flight, and no one is sitting around us. There's no one in front of us, no one behind us, and I'm in the window seat. And all of a sudden, I hear a man's voice, and it's a clear voice, very peaceful, but assertive. And he said, something is going to happen to you. And it alerted me. It freaked me out. Me freaking out, like hitting the back of my seat, woke up my mom. And as I'm going to tell her, hey, did you hear that? I passed out and I had a seizure.
Oh my gosh.
I've never had seizures before. So fast forward, what ended up happening, we do an emergency landing. We find a cyst in my lung that was literally the size of a grapefruit or not bigger. Oh, sorry. Size of a grapefruit or bigger. And it took about 90% of my lung capacity. Wow. And they said if I was still on the plane, which it looked like I was asleep after I had the seizure. So if my mom was not on the plane, they said that I would have went brain dead because I had no oxygen to my brain. And when I woke up on the plane, I was blind. I had no bodily function in the sense of like I was numb everywhere and I couldn't move. Wow. So my mom being on that flight and me hearing that voice and that which woke her up saved my life.
Wow.
So we now knew that I needed a lung surgery. And we land in Chicago and we're having to decide, okay, are we going to do this surgery here or not? We opted to take a 3-day train ride back to Orange County. Wow. And I think we're like on there for a day. We're sitting with these women, talking with them like we're talking now. And I hear the voice again. And the voice said to me so clearly, he said, get off the train right now and ask for a map. And it was as if a man leaned over into my ear and spoke. It was audible. It was clear. And I knew that voice because that's the voice I heard on the plane. Wow. So in that moment, I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. And I told my mom, I'm like, we need to get off this train. Can we find a map? And sure enough, the hospital in Chicago put us on the wrong train going back to Orange County. So we were actually going through the Colorado Rockies or about to, which is technically the same cabin pressure as a plane. So it was a 911 emergency. Fast forward, we ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We got let off the train in the middle of nowhere, ended up in Albuquerque where I ended up having emergency lung surgery. I was in the hospital there for almost 2 months because of how my lung was. I had so much space now in my lung. And when you have a collapsed lung, you can't breathe. Yeah. And so that's essentially what I was dealing with. And fast forward, I came back to Orange County and had about a 2.5 year journey where I was fighting for my life. I unfortunately ended up having a collapsed lung when I came back. Another God moment is when you have surgeries like that, you have to go in constantly to get checked on CT scans. And so I did. And the surgeon at the time said, okay, if there's anything wrong with your lung, we'll let you know immediately. If you don't hear from me by Friday, it's like a Wednesday. If you don't hear from me by Friday, you're healing fine. So Friday comes, no phone call. And my mom, it was the first weekend by myself since recovering. And that night, the same voice again says to me, don't lie down, sit up, sleep sitting up. So all weekend I'm sitting up, which I was kind of used to in the hospital, but I just knew something was not right. And sure enough, Monday morning, the surgeon's calling me at 5 a.m. My phone, I woke up to 7 phone calls. Oh my goodness. And the first thing he says to me is, don't freak out. And so I'm sitting there and I don't want to freak out because of my lung surgery and I'm by myself. Yeah. And he said, you need to call 911. You have a collapsed lung and you need to come to the hospital. So he never ended up checking my scan the week before. Way. So the Lord literally spared my life 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
And I have had the ability to hear his voice audibly. And I walked through a 2-year journey where I ended up having 3 lung surgeries. Wow. Unfortunately, the first lung surgeon put the wrong materials in my lung, which caused me to develop tuberculosis. So, a typical day for me was waking up, going to Hoag Hospital at 7 a.m., 6 a.m., having a 2-hour infusion, going to work at the car dealership, and then at night going back to Hoag for another 2-hour infusion. Because I had to do that for a year straight before my surgery. And if I didn't do it a year straight and I missed a day, I had to start all over again.
Oh my goodness.
So my life was a lot different than people my age. I was in my mid-30s, having a tube in my back, a tube in my arm connected to me at all times, but still navigating through life. For me, I felt like the Lord was like, you're not dead, you're alive. So live a life where you're alive and you can go to work. Yeah. You can go to dinners with your friends. Yeah. Sure, it looks a little bit different, but don't allow yourself to claim that over yourself. Yes. And so for me, I lived my life that way, hoping for, a miracle. And come to find, I went through this, year-long treatment and they were preparing me for my surgery. And the surgeon at UCLA said, we're really sorry, but it didn't work the way that we need it to. So you're not just going to have 1 more surgery. You're going to have 3 more surgeries. Oh my gosh. And so just preparing myself at 34, having the doctor bring me into a room and just really be honest with me about what could happen of, hey, listen, this surgery that we're going into is really serious because of the infection in your lung, and that hasn't been like, it hasn't dissipated, it hasn't gone away. When we open you up in this surgery, there is a high probability that you're going to go septic.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, but we have an amazing team here. And so I literally, and you know, it's hard. It's like, I literally wrote my parents letters not knowing if I was going to make it through the surgery.
Wow.
And let me tell you, when you go through that and you're on a medical bed going into a surgery that you don't know if you're going to make it out from, all the things that you thought mattered don't matter.
Oh my gosh, Melissa. Oh my gosh. That story is just, I mean, how God worked miracles time and time again in your life. And and the fact that you had to write your family members those letters, like, how does that, I mean, change your perspective in life? Like, what is that?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that I realized, the first thing that came into my mind before I went in the surgery, because I was by myself, I was there, I got an epidural. I was by myself in there for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I think the first thing that came to my mind is, if this is my last moments, I'm like, what would people say about me at my funeral? Like, how would people remember me? How would people describe me? And I think at that time, but I didn't have the relationship with the Lord that I have now.
Yeah.
And for me, it was more about like the people I had relationships with, the conversations, the time spent, how I was impacting people positively in their life.
Wow.
It wasn't about how much money I had, how many accolades I got in the industry that I was in, because none of that would matter when I was gone. So not knowing if God was going to give me another chance, I just knew, like, Lord, I want to live my life differently. I want to love people well, because I want to have a legacy of loving people well, not being a hard worker.
Yeah.
So it shifted my perspective drastically. And so that was honestly, that was the blessing within itself, is that I was able to connect with God on a completely different level. Some people will never walk through that in their lifetime until they reach the end of their life. And so I honestly feel it was like a gift that he gave me. And, I honor that, because he saved my life, basically. I mean, just to finish it up, I went through the surgery, I got out, obviously. And the surgeon that I had, he's Jewish, Dr. Robert Cameron at UCLA, one of the top lung surgeons in the country. He comes in and he pulls up my CT scan, and he said, this is your CT scan a couple days ago. Do you see all this infection in your lung? And I was like, yeah. He was like, okay, well, I'm not sure how to describe this, but when I went to open you up, it was completely gone.
Oh my
So
goodness.
he had no medical explanation for how the infection was removed, because they were going in to remove it. And that was the most dangerous part of my surgeries, was this like specific surgery. So when he opened me up, the infection was gone. It was there 2 days ago. I've been doing treatment for a year.
No way.
And he was able to do everything that I needed to have done in that one surgery. So, not having 3 more surgeries, but only having 1 more, and I was healed.
Wow.
In Jesus' name.
So in 2 days, it disappeared, or
It disappeared. There's no, for the type of infection that it is, you have to go through a year treatment with like a very heavy drug that is not guaranteed. So after doing that for a year and then doing the multiple CT scans, you can see the infection in my lung wall. And so they had still to this day, I remember having a conversation with him a year ago, because I would have to do Zoom calls just to check in with him. And I'm like, Dr. Cameron, I'm like, and still to this day, in the past 40 something years that you've been working, like, have you ever seen someone walk through this and like seen this type of like result? And he starts laughing, and he's like, still to this day, I've never experienced this.
Oh my gosh.
And like, it was Jesus.
Oh yes. What a massive testimony to him.
Yes. And I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because when he walked in and I said, Jesus healed me.
Yeah.
I think his world was rocked, because he could not medically prove or describe how that happened.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, medical doctors and people that work in the medical field, like, when they see the miraculous, it's just, it's eye-opening. It's like, there's no explanation. And so it's just amazing to hear your testimony and your story, and and how God miraculously healed you at many times over. And the fact that you heard God's voice audibly was so incredible. And I think many people, you just were, okay, God, I'm going to listen to your voice. And you listened.
Yeah.
And that I think was key too, Melissa, the fact that you listen, your obedience and listening to the voice of God.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that is huge. But how would you, through going through all of this, your perspectives changed, but also how would you define success?
Well, for me, success has shifted a lot.
Yeah.
I think success for me is in how you are loving your spouse, loving your family, loving your community. How involved are you with building the kingdom, whether it's in the church, outside of the four walls? Like, to me, success is living out, I feel like, the purpose that God has for you. And I know sometimes people get confused with purpose and they don't feel like they know what their purpose is. I don't necessarily think it's one thing. I think God gives us many options to choose from. He's not a God of like, if you don't open door number 1, I'm not able to do the work in you that I can, or bless you or bless other people through you. I think it's like the activation of being able to step into something and honoring that, so and to step into something and to treat it the way that Jesus would, or to treat that person the way Jesus would. I think sometimes in our culture, we're so driven by your gift and like, are you living out your purpose? And do you know, and if you don't know your purpose, you're not getting far in life. And I think that's a misconception. I think that when we spend time with God and he wants you to live a life of honoring him and honoring others, we can do that in so many ways. And I think that's what it boils down to. Success is living a life of honoring God by honoring others.
It's so good, so powerful. And it's so true. I think many people, they have this idyllic view of like, okay, for many young adults, I feel like when talking to them, they're like, I don't know my purpose. Like you said, I don't know what, my calling is. And truly, if you understand what you just said, loving God and loving people, honoring God and loving people. If you do that in your day-to-day life, God and your obedience, like what you listen to that voice, the voice of God. And I think obedience is a key to that as well. Like take action, if God tells you to go love that person and then you go love that person, or you go out and you love a homeless person and then it turns into a homeless ministry or whatever it is, just take that first step.
Absolutely.
Of honoring God, but also honoring and loving people, but take that obedient step. And I think that that's key is you never know. I always say this, you never know what's on the other side of your obedience.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's so good.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes that I've seen believers, what they do is, I do believe it's good to like sit and wait for God's wisdom when we're trying to navigate decisions or certain things. But when it comes to like the business world, especially, I knew nothing about cars.
Yeah.
I never wanted to sell cars.
Yeah.
I never had a desire to do that. I never felt my purpose was in that. But with my obedience of, you know what, I'm going to step into this, God. I'm going to see what you're going to do with it. I'm going to see where it takes me. And I'm going to honor this by honoring, the time that I'm been given. I'm going to show up I worked 6 days a week at 23, 24 years old up until now.
Wow.
And so for me, it was just honoring what I was presented and like working hard and just seeing what God did with it.
That's awesome. That's so profound. I love that, Melissa. So looking ahead 10 to 20 or 30 years, what are you most looking forward to?
Oh my goodness. Well, having a family and having grandkids.
Yes.
That would be like the number one thing, and just living a life for Jesus and being able to raise a family in that and to impact people's lives. I think that is something that's really like close to my heart is how can I help people, maybe even in the space that I've been in for so long, or even help people in a place of wealth and financial means, in the sense of like, what could they do with if they knew Jesus? What kind of impact could they have?
So good.
So I do see myself being able to help lead non-believers and that are, how do I put this? Like financially successful non-believers, and helping to lead them to Jesus.
It's so good.
And to show that their impact could leave a legacy of blessing thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives, and just for them to be able to see like what it means to build the kingdom.
It's so good.
Because it doesn't just help bless other people. It's like when you give, you are also blessed.
So
and
good.
so I think for me is having an impact in the space, whether it's the car world or even like the clientele that are buying these kind of cars, is being able to maybe have like a ministry or an outlet for these individuals to do something grand with their money. And by grand, I mean like being able to like save others by bringing them to Jesus.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I love that. That's beautiful. And I love how you say when you give, you're getting so much in return. And it's so true. It's, in the Bible, it talks about give and it shall come back to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running out all over, it'll be poured into your lap. And it's just so cool to see that when you give to others, and you're obedient, and again, you're honoring God, you're loving people, but you're giving in your business or whoever you're around. If you're giving, God will always give more back. And I've learned that, and you've learned that in life. Well, it's so beautiful. All the things that you've shared today, Melissa, are so good. And thank you for sharing your heart. And is there one last final encouragement that you'd love to give the listeners or the people watching today? Something that you want to leave them with? Maybe it's something that God placed on your heart today, or about your calling, or whatever that would be.
Yeah.
Look
at the camera. Okay. Well, one thing I want to say is, if you're watching this and you're feeling like you have no purpose or direction, or you're constantly questioning, am I doing enough? I just want to tell you that where you are right now in life is where God wants you to be. And there's so much growth that's going to constantly happen for you in your life. And I just want to encourage you that most of the things that you're worrying about at the end of your days don't even matter. And so I just want to encourage you, for me and where I'm at, especially in my walk, is find a community of people that really love the Lord and that really are honoring things that you want to honor. Like, surround yourself with people that want to help you be a better person and to be a better version of yourself. So I just want to encourage you that don't be down on yourself if you don't feel like you're, at a place in your career, or as a mom, or as a friend, a daughter. Like, don't feel like you're not good enough. I just want to say for anyone watching this is, wherever you're at in your season of life, that's exactly where you are supposed to be. And that God is working through you, and He is preparing things for you. And the last thing He wants you to do is to get down on yourself, to feel like you're not living out your purpose, like you're not successful because of what the world defines as success. But I just want to encourage you to really connect with the Lord daily, and also surround yourself with people and a community of people that truly love Jesus. It drastically changed my life. And for me, finding a local church and getting involved in a community of people that really live their life so differently from most people that you'll interact with on a daily basis, it changes your perspective in life. And you begin to see the world differently, the things you have in a different way. And most of the things that you're worrying about right now in life actually won't matter in the end. So I just want to encourage you, find a local church that you can connect and build community with. And I can tell you, because I've experienced it, it is going to change your life and change your future and change your perspective.
So good. I love that. That's so powerful. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. It was so amazing. Good. My friend, it was always fun. It's like great to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. You have to come back.
100%.
I would love that.
But thank you so much. It was an honor.
Oh my gosh. And then maybe you guys might see bloopers later, but we did have like a grasshopper come on the show as well. Hopefully maybe he'll make an appearance here soon. But anyway, we had some fun times on the show, but thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Collective Talk, where we shared faith in the fast lane with Melissa Perry. Stay tuned for future episodes as we dive into into the topics of prayer, family, and ministry.